If you're a student, you know the feeling. Stress. It can feel like it's just part of the deal, right? But what if it didn't have to be? Today, we're not just going to talk about pressure. We are going to build an actual practical toolkit to help you manage it. So let's dive in.
So, does this look familiar to you? You've got this huge assignment, it's looming over you, and you feel totally overwhelmed. So, you put it off. Of course, putting it off just makes the stress worse, which then makes it even harder to start. It's this vicious cycle, and believe me, it traps so many of us.
But here's the good news. Getting out of this trap isn't about some magical burst of motivation or just having more willpower. Nope. It's about building a better toolkit, a set of real psychological strategies you can use to change your habits and, just as importantly, your thinking. And that is exactly what we're going to build together today.
Okay, rule number 1 is a simple but honestly a revolutionary rule to live by. Follow the plan, not the mood. This whole idea, which is called behavioral activation, it goes against everything we're taught, that we need to feel motivated before we can act. But in reality, waiting until you feel like it is pretty much the perfect recipe for procrastination.
So what exactly is behavioral activation? Well, it's a technique where you decide what you're going to do, you make a plan, and you just do it, whether you feel like it or not. The key thing to get here, and this is backed by neuroscience, is that the action itself is what creates the momentum. You finish a small task, your brain gives you a little hit of dopamine, which feels like a reward. And that feeling, well, that's motivation. So you see, action comes first, the good feelings follow. To really put this into practice, let's use a powerful metaphor, the three-legged stool. Think about it. A stool needs 3 legs to be stable. If one leg is too short, or if it's missing completely, the whole thing just topples right over. Your life as a student, it works exactly the same way.
For you to have a stable, balanced week that could actually handle academic pressure, you need a solid mix of 3 different kinds of activities: routine, necessary, and pleasurable. And you need them in roughly equal measure. When they get out of balance, like it's all necessary work and 0 pleasure, that's what leads directly to burnout. The whole stool just collapses.
So what do these legs actually look like? Well, routine activities are your foundation. Getting consistent sleep, eating regular meals, maybe keeping your space from becoming a total disaster zone. Necessary tasks, that's the obvious stuff. Hitting deadlines, studying, emailing professors. And then, crucially, there's the pleasurable activities. This is your recharge, hobbies, hanging out with friends, anything that brings you joy. You absolutely need all 3. And this framework is so useful for getting past those common roadblocks. If an essay feels way too big, don't put write essay on your to-do list. That's terrifying. Instead, schedule a tiny action. Research for 20 minutes. If your motivation is just 0, remember the rule. Follow the plan, not the mood. Just start that 20-minute block, and if you feel like you have no time, take a hard look at your 3-legged stool. Are you spending time on stuff that doesn't even fit into those 3 essential categories? So we've covered our actions. Now let's switch gears and talk about our thoughts. Because managing stress isn't just about what you do, it's about how you think. A lot of these tools come from something called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which is all about how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all tangled up together. We all have these unhelpful thinking patterns, these little mental traps we fall into. The first step to getting out of them is just learning to spot them in the first place.
Do any of these sound a little familiar? Mind reading is when you just assume you know what someone else is thinking about you, and it's never good. Compare and despair is that painful habit of looking at everyone else and feeling like you're the only one struggling. Shoulds and musts put this impossible pressure on yourself. And then there's mountains and molehills, where one tiny setback feels like a full-blown catastrophe. Just recognizing these thoughts for what they are is the first step to taking away their power.
Okay, so once you can spot these unhelpful thoughts, the next step is to actively change your internal monologue. I like to think of it as firing your harsh inner critic and hiring a compassionate, much more effective inner coach to take over. And I mean, just listen to the difference. Coach A, the critic, just yells at you, "You're useless." That's not helpful, it's paralyzing. But Coach B, the compassionate coach, says, "Hey, everyone makes mistakes. Let's figure out what went wrong and how we can do better." The most important thing here is that you get to choose which coach you listen to. Now, if you're struggling to find that Coach B voice, here is the ultimate hack. Just ask yourself this one simple question. We are so much kinder, so much more constructive with our friends than we ever are with ourselves.
This question is basically a shortcut to finding that helpful, compassionate point of view.
All right, let's put this all together with some practical in-the-moment tools. These are for when you feel that wave of anxiety starting to build, whether you're in the library or just staring at a blank page at 2 in the morning. This is called the STOPP Technique, and it's like an emergency brake for a runaway train of thought. First, you literally just stop what you're doing. Then, take a deep breath. Ground yourself. Next, observe. What's actually going through your head? How are you feeling? No judgment, just notice. Then you gain perspective. Ask yourself, is this crazy thought a fact, or is it just my opinion? And finally, you proceed by choosing what's actually the most helpful thing to do next, not just the thing your panic wants you to do.
Okay, let's take a classic unhelpful thought, the one that pops up in the middle of an exam. It feels so real, so powerful in that moment. But using our tools, we can learn to reframe it.
Think of this as your cheat sheet for those tough moments. These are helpful coping statements. So when your brain screams, "I'm going to fail," you can have a comeback ready. This is difficult, but I can do hard things. When you think everyone else gets this but me, you can remind yourself, thoughts are just thoughts. They aren't facts. See, this isn't about some fake positivity. It's about finding a more balanced and, frankly, more truthful thought to guide your actions.
So we've built a pretty powerful toolkit today, right? Balancing your life with a 3-legged stool, spotting those mental traps, hiring that inner coach, and using tools like STOPP when things get tough. Look, you don't have to master all of them at once. The real challenge is to just pick one. So which tool are you going to add to your kit this week? Choose one, give it a real try, and start taking back control of your academic stress today.